Welcome to On Forge, a StoneBlade Entertainment YouTube news show focused on SolForge Fusion centric content, news from the growing library of StoneBlade Entertainment games, and the occasional StoneBlade guest, including on this very episode. I'm your host, Jurch, head of organized play at StoneBlade, and joining me as per usual is game designer and head of customer service, Lucas Lewinter. Lucas, since we talked last, the SolForge Fusion digital client went live. How much have you been playing it, and what have you enjoyed best?
Oh man, on top of just like we do play testing every day of it, but on top of that, I've gotten at least in a couple of games on the matchmaking ladder a day. I've gotten up to Ascension level 9 on the campaign since our launch. I've been having a blast with it. Honestly, it's just been fantastic to play with our fans. Just at any time, I'm able to hop into a matchmaking queue and then find someone to play with. It's been fantastic. It's just very easy to play SolForge now with people. It's been a blast.
Yeah, it's so much fun. I'm usually logging in during my lunch, so then there's always somebody around during the noon hour, at least Central Time, and all the different players that I get to see playing, and then connecting with more and more people. It's been so much fun, and it's been flying by. We're going to talk so much more about SolForge Fusion and the digital client in particular in this month's episode. But I would also like to preview our guest for this episode is none other than CEO of StoneBlade and the creator of SolForge Fusion, Justin Gary himself. But because this is a news show, first and foremost, let's start there.
Yeah. First, we'll start out with Ascension. So the first Ascension expansion in 3 years is coming to GameFound this summer. It is designed for newcomers and longtime fans of the series. In this acclaimed deck building game, you are one of the legendary warriors of Vigil, capable of protecting your realm from annihilation. But you cannot do it alone. Recruit mighty heroes and wield powerful constructs to aid you in battle against the monsters of Deifel. At the time of this recording, we have blown past 3,000 followers and are on our way to 4,000, which will be our next update is. So link will be in the description to follow that, and you'll be able to get some free promo cards from following the campaign before the launch.
That's pretty cool. Ascension is the flagship of StoneBlade Entertainment. It was Justin Gary's first game that he made, and I mean it makes sense that there's been a 3 year gap between expansions because of all the other games that we're going to be listing right now that have added to the StoneBlade library. So having this new expansion is really really cool news. Speaking of which, what about Ascension Tactics?
Yeah, so Ascension Tactics, right now we've reopened the Pledge Manager so you're able to make any changes to your address and finalize any payments if you haven't done so already. Unfortunately, due to some tooling issues there on the miniatures and a couple of revisions that we wanted to make, we are pushing back the delivery to this fall. Originally, it was going to be around this time, but unfortunately, we had to push it back. If you want to know more information as well as see some of the changes we did on the miniatures, you can check out the Kickstarter update.
Yeah, and I mean that tends to happen in when you're dealing with a lot of moving pieces in games, figuratively and literally. So we'll make sure that we're getting that as soon as we can out to people. What about Shards of Infinity?
Yeah, Shards of Infinity still doing good. We also open up the Pledge Manager that so you can update your addresses and make any payments they have left. Um, we are still on track for shipping here in July. We just posted an update recently showing off a lot of some of the components there. We're hard at work. Things are beginning to get printed, and we should be all on track here for a July release.
And speaking of this summer, You Gotta Be Kitten Me is coming out. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so You Gotta Be Kidding Me is actually one of our older games that we're bringing back here. It's going to be a Target exclusive coming out this June. We will put a link in the description here for our the page. You're able to sign up to be notified of when it's going to hit stores, as well as just kind of see some cute pictures of cats from. A lot of the images are actually StoneBlade Entertainment pets. So you'll get to see some of our cute little furry friends there as well.
I think that was the most fun for me when I was introduced to this game. is when we were laying out the pieces to start, then everybody's trying to find their pets and trying to get all of their tokens of either their pets or, oh, I know that one's yours. I'm going to steal it from you first. That type of thing. It was really fun.
Yeah, and you'll actually be able to, with this new edition, print out your own pet onto one of the cards with a couple of sticker sheets there, as well as add on the little glasses or the hats, depending on whatever suit combination you want your cat to be, or other pets.
Oh,
We won't restrict you to just cats if you don't want. So.
I that's going to be perfect. That we want to get people having their own pets in the game as well. I think that's a really cool little twist to a fun bluffing kind of liar's dice type game.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got SolForge Fusion.
Of
The
course.
digital client went live since our last episode. That was the week of April 16th. People from all over the world got early access on Steam, and there was so much excitement. I know that week I streamed for a total of like 15 hours by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And in addition to all the buzz that was generated for the digital side, there's been a lot of interest in the physical game now too. That we've seen an uptick, including a lot of not only people getting more interested in playing in the online tournaments, playing the physical game. I know my local scene is starting to get many more people there each week. And then we also had Fuse Fest 2, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Now, since the release of the digital client, Lucas, what are some of the new features that have been added recently since the game dropped?
Oh yeah, we here especially in the first month we're trying to do a bunch of weekly updates. So there's a lot of bug fixes that are going on, but some of the newer features from moving on to the alpha to the beta here, we have an XP track now. So all of your decks contribute to this track that allows you to unlock free decks and cosmetics. We are doing a whole bunch of digital events, sealed events there, where you're able to sign up. We'll send you some digital codes, add those decks to your account, and play with those. And then also we have our store available now to play. Buy digital only decks, and you can find that on StoneBlade.com. And hopefully we'll be adding that in to the App Store as well here soon.
Yeah, this game is it already was so much fun right away, but then these things that we're adding, like that XP track, it got to the point where I don't have enough experience points to unlock all of those rewards yet. So I have to get back to grinding this game, and I've got over 1.2 million experience points.
Mm-hmm. I'm ashamed
And
of how much my own free time I've put in there as well as my work time.
wait, you get free time? That's not
It's
fair.
surprising. It's every once in a while I sit down and play the games that I play for work for fun, which is silly.
Oh, and so you mentioned the sealed events. To kick off the release that Saturday, we had a sealed event. It was Saturday, April 20th. And yeah, wild that we can do a sealed event for a digital experience. We had 70 people who signed up for it. The structure for that event was I had deck codes to give out to people. That was your sealed deck of 4 half decks. And so you register for the event, and then that Saturday morning, you direct message me on Discord. I copied and pasted that code to you. You redeem that code, then you make whatever fuse decks you want out of that and play in the event. Anybody who won 3 matches, so going above 500, they were able to keep that entire sealed package of those 4 decks. So if you had some really spicy ones that didn't have a good fit, you play the decks that you wanted to, and then if you won 3 or more matches, you got to keep all 4 of those half decks. And any decks that of the players that went 2 and 3 or 1 and 4, whatever, those decks were just reclaimed back by the Forge. In that event, we had 2 players go undefeated out of this 70, and they both were playing Utera Necrium. But as far as I could kind of tell, the decks were very, very different, and it looks like those players played stylistically very different approaches to that Utera Necrium pairing. If people want a deeper dive into that sealed event, check out the episode description for a recap article that I wrote where I get into some of the strategy of it and just end up being super excited for what online tournaments can look like. And in May, we already have 2 other events that are in store. So check out SolForgeFusion.com under the events page and see if either one of those are going to be right for you. But we can't forget that SolForge Fusion is also a physical game. Fuse Fest 2 just happened in St. Paul, Minnesota at the Intercontinental Riverfront Hotel. It was a blast. There will be an official news article being posted on the SolForge Fusion website going into more detail on it, but I want to kind of talk about it here, kind of give an overview because it was kind of my baby, if you will. That it was one thing I was really excited about, and you were able to show up to it too, which was
Mm-hmm.
really cool. And I definitely appreciated you making the trek across the border from Wisconsin to Minnesota to partake. We had 40 people show up for this event, and the overall experience was great. Do you have any highlights that you kind of want to share about your Fuse Fest experience?
I think this is like one of the first experiences I had where I was actually able to sit down and participate in one of these events because and all the other things like at Gen Con, PAX Unplugged, all the other events we do, I'm at the sales booth and I'm doing demos and whatnot. So this is the first time I actually just got to sit down and play with people and go through some of our sealed tournaments. We did a constructed event and then the storyline event as well. It was exciting to actually be able to just play with our players in person.
And the feedback I got from them is they loved playing against you too. They loved playing alongside you and just being able to get to share space with the people who make this game possible because there's so many people that don't get the credit they deserve and don't get to like enjoy. We make games at this company, but sometimes you kind of lose sight of that. So I'm glad and I wanted this experience to be something that you and Fletch and Andrew would be able to just remember that games are fun and the games that you make people enjoy and that you can enjoy them too. One of the things that you mentioned was the storyline event. One of the marquee events of Fuse Fest was this storyline. Storyline events are a staple of most major SolForge Fusion like conventions or presences at the large scale gaming size, but we haven't talked about that a whole lot on this show for people who don't really know what's going on. I want to do a deeper dive in a future episode on storyline and the lore of SolForge Fusion because it's very, very important to understand what's going on with the Forgeborn with these different factions. But this episode we get to have Justin Gary on, so then we'll have to save that for a future episode. I do want to talk about what this storyline event kind of was. Players were split into faction teams. So there was an Aloyan team, Utera, Necrium, Tempest, and each faction was tasked with vying for the favor of different spies in this Necrium city of Shroud. So George kind of came up with this Necrium city and these different spies, and it was your job as the factions to figure out which spies you wanted to kind of gain the favor of, and then they'd help you in combat. They all had powerful abilities, and I'll be sure to spoil those in the article. And anybody that attended Fuse Fest, you got to have copies of all of those four special game changer cards. But the crux of the story revolved around gathering information about something called the Dark Forge and how Cersei's been using it in her rise to power. There's a really condemning piece of evidence that was found that could expose her, but the Necrium faction players, upon winning this storyline event, they decided it was best to destroy the evidence and keep Cersei's secret. Oh, it was. I was hoping they were going to reveal the secret, but they decided they wanted to keep Cersei's source of power kind of hidden away from everybody else.
I'm
And
disappointed
there
for
will.
them. I wanted Nix Nekia to reveal the secrets and lead the revolution, but you know our players wanted Queen Cersei's reign to continue.
I'm a big fan of them too, of Nikia, that is. But for whatever reason, Cersei is just undefeated still. If you are interested in the lore of SolForge Fusion and especially the lore from Fuse Fest 2, look out for the full lore recap being published in the very near future. That will pop up on the digital client, it'll pop up on the SolForge Fusion website, and it will very likely be linked into this episode description. So we're very proud of the event that we put on, and we want to share that story with everybody. Now, we also had various other tournaments that happened. There was a major sealed event, there were side pods, and then there was a constructed event. Lucas, you were able to participate in some of these. What were some of your highlights at the table there?
Oh yeah. For the sealed event, it was just exciting getting to see everyone try out these new cards for the first time. Some people had participated in our the tournaments that we did closer to the Kickstarter, where they got to play with these set three cards. But a lot of people, these were brand new cards. Maybe they were new to the game and they hadn't fully like looked through all the spoilers for set three or whatnot. But being able to like that first time discovery of these
Mhm.
cards. It was a lot of fun to see. The set really sings in sealed play. There's a lot of very good cohesive synergies. Shout out to Fletch for just making a really fun set. Um,
Mhm.
my sealed experience, man. I apparently I woke up on the wrong side of the bed that morning, and I did not win a single game. I was there were a couple of really close ones, but I didn't have my mojo going for me. But had a lot of fun. And then in the constructed event, I was one game away from top cut. I had lost my I was 3-1 at the end, and I needed to get 4-0. But I think the person I went against there got first or second place in the event. So I don't feel too bad losing to them.
There were a lot of really spicy new synergies that came out in terms of like spirits, in terms of Hantu. That card is going to really, it's going to push the competitive scene to get players to figure out how to play around it. And it was, yeah, it was really great to just see all these people with this sense of discovery and let's see what we can make happen. And so many times there were so many different players that did something really cool. And I got called over plenty of times, or I got to see when a new dragon would change lanes and then damage the enemy player, or there are certain spells that are going crazy. And I don't even recognize all of the cards anymore, which is such a cool feeling.
hmm
And I want to give a special shout out to Cade Leffler, the Puffin Man on Discord, and Stephen Walters, aka Hellkite, for winning the constructed and sealed events respectively during Fuse Fest. And again, thank you everybody who traveled near and far to spend a weekend just jamming out SolForge games and participating in the storyline. And it was a great weekend. And thank you to all the StoneBlade staff that ended up showing up for that too. That it was really special to me. And, in particular, Lucas, I thank you for everything that you did to help make this possible.
it's my honor and my privilege. I was very excited to be a part of this event. Sadly, wasn't a part of the previous Fuse Fest, but I'm looking forward to what's coming up next and what other crazy and fun events we get to put on.
Well, speaking of crazy and fun events, we can spend a little time talking about Gen Con this year. Gen Con 2024 is taking place in August. And of course, we're going to be there. And there's going to be SolForge Fusion. We're going to have a storyline sealed, constructed, all that good stuff. We also have world championships for the entire StoneBlade library. So, Ascension will be on Thursday. Ooh, I forgot the exact day in August that is. Let me do an on air production meeting. Thursday, August 1st. Uh, these times I think are subject to change based on the Gen Con people, how they're rearranging the schedule. But as of right now, the Ascension World Championships are Thursday, August 1st at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Ascension Tactics is Friday, August 2nd at 5 p.m. Shards of Infinity is Saturday at 5 p.m. And the SolForge Fusion is Saturday at noon. And those are the World Championships. Check out the Gen Con website. I think that those events people can start registering in at the end of May or in June to check out exactly what events we're putting on. One quick note on the SolForge Fusion World Championships. Last year to qualify for Worlds, you needed to have a deck that was fully ranked silver. So both halves had to be silver prior to the World Championship event. However, with so many new players joining the fray, we want to open it up. So Worlds this year, any deck that is unranked bronze or silver can participate. So you just need to be able to have the physical decks to come to the table because this is going to be still an in-person event. All you need are the physical decks. They can be ranked unranked, bronze, or silver in order to participate in Worlds 2024. And without further ado, we have the head honcho himself, Justin Gary, joining us for this show. Justin, thank you for taking time to be on Forge.
Thanks, man. It's great to be here, George. Thanks for putting this whole program together. It's been really exciting to have a new way to reach the community. I'm glad to be on. Glad to be on for the first time.
That's awesome to hear. And before we dive into a lot of the stuff with SolForge Fusion, we need to know your origin story. So, how did you get involved in gaming and then eventually creating StoneBlade Entertainment?
Oh man, yeah, this has been a fun journey for me. I guess it really started back when I was 17 years old. I won the Magic the Gathering U.S. National Championships. I was the youngest person ever to win. That was kind of what catapulted me into the gaming world. I started traveling around the world, playing tournaments in Rome and Sydney and Tokyo, and I made enough money to pay my way through college. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. Gaming is sweet. And then for some reason, I decided to go to law school. That was a miserable decision. I was not very happy there. So a year later, I dropped out of NYU Law, moved across the country, and started designing games at a company called Upper Deck, where I was one of the designers on the Marvel versus the Versus system, Marvel versus DC trading card game. I led designed the Infinite Crisis expansion and a Batman starter. I then created the World of Warcraft miniatures game from the ground up and worked on several other projects like the World of Warcraft trading card game. After doing that for about 5 years, I really felt like I kind of had a handle on how to make games and decided to try my luck on my own. And so I quit there and started working on some own projects on my own. And the first game that I launched was a little game called Ascension, which is what started StoneBlade Entertainment, which at the time was called Gary Games. So it's a little thing. I'd never expected Ascension to become what it became. I kind of was a game I made as a prototype to play with my friends. And I'll never forget my buddy Rob Doherty said, he played it. He's like, dude, this is the thing. You have the ball. Run, go, make the thing. And I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. And made it and took it to a show, and people loved it, and invested all my life savings to make that first print run. I would often joke that if I didn't sell this, I was gonna have to make my house out of Ascension boxes. But fortunately, I sold all of those boxes, and that kind of took off to become the foundation of StoneBlade Entertainment. And then a year later, I'll tell the one more story that I love. It's one of my favorites. Is a year later, I was at the PAX Dev conference, and this is like a kind of developer thing to learn about the games. And Richard Garfield was giving a talk, and of course, Richard Garfield, the creator of Magic the Gathering, he's my idol. I'm gonna go listen to him talk. And I was listening to him talk. One of the people in the audience, and there was a Q&A period at the end, and someone said, "What's your favorite game right now?" And he said, "Ascension." And I literally jumped out of my seat and said, "Whoop," like a little kid, like just ridiculous. The whole room laughs, whatever. But that was my end, and that was my opportunity. So I was able to go to Richard and say, "Hey, I made Ascension. We had met while I was a pro player, but he didn't remember me super well. But that got
Mhm.
us talking. We started having a conversation, and immediately it was clear we both wanted to make the same next game. That game was the original version of SolForge Fusion, then called SolForge, and it's been a wonderful journey and partnership ever since.
Well, go into more detail about that, about SolForge, kind of the heart of that, and then eventually transforming into SolForge Fusion.
Yeah, so the original idea for SolForge, right? This is back we're in 2011, so put you back in the way back machine. We're in the very early days of iPhone and iPad, and we're in this. So mobile gaming hadn't really caught up to the fun and awesomeness of tabletop gaming. We had just made the digital version of Ascension, which was the first digital deck building game, and we wanted to make a digital trading card game, a native digital trading card game. This did not exist at the time. There was no Hearthstone, there's no Magic Arena, and so we were like, okay, what would it take? How do you get the best of the trading card game world and build it as a digital game? And we went through countless iterations. I would fly up to Seattle, he would fly down to where I was living in San Diego. We work on projects, and the idea we came up with was this system where cards leveled as you play them, and it got rid of the idea of having to have mana in the game and having so every single time you played a card, there was three level versions of the card. You could, when you played it, card leveled up, goes to your discard pile. Every few turns, you shuffle your deck, get access to your new higher level card. So really was a wonderful combination of like the fun of Magic with creatures that are battling, and the TCG experience of building your deck, and the fun of deck building games in Ascension where you're actually building your deck as you play. and it was because there were only 5 cards in hand, 5 lanes. It worked really well on the phone. It worked really well on mobile devices, and so it really became this. Yeah, there's lots of divergent paths, and we had a lot of crazy mechanics that didn't end up doing, like fog of war and a bunch of other stuff that was happening in the game. But eventually, that core loop of leveling up cards that lets you not only tell a great story with what you're doing, like the fact that I could have a dragon egg that turns into a dragon whelp that turns into a giant fire breathing dragon tells an awesome story. Or everybody loves or hates Krogius, who's this little dinky 1/1 critter that then goes into a cocoon, then turns into the biggest, baddest monster in the game, right? That experience of telling a great story is incredible. The fact that we can balance those games, but even though those 2 cards are both great stories, the fact that the 30/30 Krogius is so threatening is we don't have to have a mana cost on it. We don't have to have an area where, like in Magic, where you can not draw enough lands and you can't play your cards. You can play any card you want in your hand, but the fact that you have to deal with playing a 1/1 and then dealing with a not so good, middle tier cocoon character, and that investment is how you balance a card like that is also really cool. So you can like hide the depth and strategy behind what is a cool flavor forward mechanic. That's where I felt like the genius of the game came from, and why Richard and I were so excited about it, why we've been so passionate about it now for freaking 13 years, since we had that very first conversation. And so carrying that heart of great gameplay and something that was really uniquely at the digital really made that come alive, was a key part of it. And that's what kind of created what I consider to be the heart of SolForge.
And I didn't play the original SolForge, but my brother-in-law Fizzlesticks did, and he loved it. Then when he came across this little Kickstarter for something called SolForge Fusion, he kind of like bullied me into, you're going to play this game with me and we're going to get great at it. So how did SolForge Fusion come about?
Yes, SolForge Fusion came about because you look. So we SolForge, we created the design 2011, ran a Kickstarter in 2012, launched the first version of the game soon thereafter, ran it for several years, but eventually we had to shut it down. Right, it was just a reality that sometimes the cost of running these server-based games can outstrip the revenue, and after a while, we couldn't keep it up forever, and that was very painful for me. I mean, that was honestly the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my career. And we had a huge fan base, like your brother-in-law, and lots of people who loved the game, who were passionate about it, were messaging me every day from that day forward that this is the game I love. What either bring it back, or how dare you, whatever variation of the flavor they wanted to give. And so I always wanted to bring it back, and I would have conversations with Richard every once in a while, like, oh man, how do we bring it back? What do we do? But at a certain point, it doesn't make sense to just bring it back. Like, once you have games like Hearthstone and Magic Arena and a million digital TCGs, just bringing another digital TCG to market, to be honest, it didn't interest Richard or I, right? I don't want to be just making another one of things that already exist. I want to do something that's at the forefront of game innovation. I want to do something that's exciting and interesting and new. So how do we take the core of what's great about SolForge, which is this leveling system and the lane-based combat and the like essence of that game, and how do we bring it into the modern era and bring something new and say something new, with the design and the technology that's available? And so the unlock came from Richard's other game, which was called Keyforge, which I was a little annoyed that he named it something so similar to SolForge, which existed first. Just for everybody that's listening, we were around way before, so we'll leave that aside. But the idea that Keyforge brought to the table was that it was the first one of these games that says we're going to algorithmically generate your deck. And so what they did was they took a regular set of playing cards, and instead of you being able to just customize it on your own, you had to play with whatever deck they gave you. And that was really cool because it stopped one of the problems that I noticed. Right, again, I was a pro Magic player for many years. I got very good at TCGs. I realized that the best thing to do when you know a TCG well is learn the spoiler right away, figure out what the best decks are right away, copy the best decks or tweak them a little bit, and then just optimize. And as the community has gotten better, basically the innovation has gotten worse. And that's now the idea of an algorithmically generated game returns some of that joy to it. It also returns the joy of pack opening again, right? Because I can open a pack and I'm not really sure what I'm going to get, and that is exciting. Whereas once I've seen a spoiler, I know every card that could be in a Magic set or anything. But Keyforge didn't really go as far as I would want it to go. Honestly, it didn't do. The cards themselves were still just like every other TCG card, and you had no customization at all, and that really bothered me because I want to take ownership of my deck. The idea that I can at least make some choices that modify my deck and control my deck, I think, is an important part of what is fun about TCGs, and I think Keyforge lost that. So, SolForge Fusion. I said, wait a minute, this is the perfect answer to be able to allow us to bring SolForge back. Because as a physical game, one of the reasons why it couldn't really be a physical game is you have to have the level 1, the level 2, and the level 3 of the card. You have to have everything kind of fit together. It just didn't make sense. But if we sold you a deck at a time and they were all algorithmically generated to be one of a kind, now actually there's something really interesting. And so we came up with this idea of shuffle building, being able to pick any 2 decks and bring them together. We had the idea of, and then I just had to, I couldn't help myself. I had to push the algorithm better, right? So we actually algorithmically generate cards. As many people who play know, we create cards where you'll have the kind of adjective noun combinations where they, you can have a fire breathing dragon or an ice yeti, and they can mix and match. You could have an ice dragon and a fire breathing yeti, and those things will match up differently to create cards. So there's over 20,000 unique permutations, probably more now with our new set the last winter coming out. It's going to be some ludicrous number. I don't even know anymore of how many unique possible cards there are. So we have more cards than 20 years of Magic plus in our first year or 2 of content. And then with every deck permutation, as we like to talk about, there's more permutations and atoms in the universe. You never see the same deck twice. So you have the experience of uniqueness, and you have that ability to still customize by shuffling your 2 decks together. And then the introduction of the Forgeborn as a card, which and I'll pause soon because I know I'm on a little rant here, but I'm excited about this stuff. The idea of the Forgeborn didn't even exist in the original SolForge. There were Forgeborn characters, but they were just like regular creatures, but they just had 4 levels instead of 3. So they're just like super powerful creatures, but they were just like creatures. And because of the way that the physical deck worked, we needed to track how many times you shuffled. So originally we had like a little counter that would just move along and say like, okay, you've shuffled once, twice, 3 times, 4 times to make sure you knew where the game state was. And then I was like, that's boring. That's like just bookkeeping. So what if we made that fun instead? And so we transformed that. Instead of being a bookkeeping thing, it's actually fun. They're like, oh yeah, I definitely know what level it is because I know I want to use my next Forgeborn power. And that created this other cool thing, which now personifies the player. And that led to once you had the players personified as cool Forgeborn characters, now that led to all the storyline events. And it's like, okay, well, if you're going to be these characters, you should definitely be playing in events. And the fact that your deck is unique means we can tie the storyline event performance to the deck. And you can see now for players, people that are listening that play the game, a lot of stuff is common, but you can see how we kind of evolve step by step from the original version of SolForge and why each step was really fun and interesting to make SolForge Fusion. And from day one, the idea was always that these would be able to scan into an online account and be able to play online, because that's the real promise also, right? That you have this one-to-one collection between a tabletop experience, a digital experience. SolForge was originally a digital experience, so I wanted to bring it back there, but I also wanted to make sure that we had something that was like people loved and that they could have physically in their hands, that they would know they would have forever, that they could have that experience. And so now we've really been able to satisfy both the core design that was exciting about the original SolForge and satisfy something that's really new and exciting to the collectible gaming world, to the digital and tabletop gaming world, of what the fusion aspect is, of being able to fuse 2 decks together, being able to fuse the digital and the physical. And that is what brought us to SolForge Fusion.
Well, good thing you kept that answer short.
Yeah.
But it's such a fascinating backstory in terms of iteration and process. And the heart of it all is you are just finding what's fun and pushing the envelope of what's exciting. And then it's come full circle because we just released the digital client version of SolForge Fusion, which is mirroring the physical, and your digital collection is your physical the marriage between those two. And it's still a work in progress, but being able to buy something physically and then also be able to instantly have it and play it in my digital client is so cool and just so much fun. And there's so many more possibilities for what people can do with this all. It's been really exciting.
Yeah, and I want to make clear to people, because obviously there's a lot of people that are fans of the physical game and love the tabletop world, but there's a lot of other people that are just coming into this new, right? We're in early access on Steam now for less than a month, right? Just a couple weeks, really, and so it's very, very new. And and we purposely built it so that you can play native on digital too. I'd say the game has multiple pillars that all stand on their own. You can play the tabletop game, ignore the digital game if you want. You can play the digital game, ignore the tabletop if you want. But if you like them both, man, it's really cool to cross over and get both experiences. And then, because I think sometimes I regret my need to do cool things. It costs me a lot of time and money, but I love it because when I started thinking about this, and this wasn't until we knew we wanted to make a digital version of SolForge Fusion right from the beginning, but I couldn't start really working on that till I saw that people loved the physical game. There's enough sales of the physical game justified. And then once we started working on that, I was like, well, okay, I could just make the digital version like just let you play the physical version and it's exactly the same. You play against friends, play against AI. But then I was like, well, that's boring. That's not enough. Like we want to, if I'm going to make a digital version of the game, I also want to do something unique with that. And that's where the whole campaign mode and doing a roguelike experience, because I love roguelike games. I played 400 plus hours of Slay the Spire, played Monster Train, I played all these different games. So one thing I've noticed is that none of these roguelike deck builders let you bring your own deck into the game. And that was a fascinating idea to me. Of course, if you could just bring a standard TCG deck and nothing changed, that's not that would have problems. But a unique deck that you could bring in and modify and upgrade and pass through, that all of a sudden was like, okay, that's super exciting. And so we started working on that idea. Honestly, it was like, I think it was like almost exactly a year ago, like not more than like 14 months ago that idea was even existing. And so it was like kind of wild how quickly we were able to build like that. Just to give people a sense, like building a system like that, it took the whole team effort, right? And Lucas is here too. He hasn't had a chance to talk in a while, but he was a big part of building that system. A lot of the team had to work very hard. Like it was, but it was a really cool, and it created a whole other way to play your deck. This idea that you could like adventure through, level up your deck, battle different bosses, have different powers, try different upgrade combinations. It really gave you that. Again, it gives you that TCG like experience of being able to customize your deck without just being able to copy other people's decks or just copy whatever deck list you see online. You have to work with the unique seed that you have with your deck, and then this unique seed that the campaign presents you, and then with that limited set of options, be able to create a cool experience that you can enjoy and that you can battle again if you want to play against other players, if you want to, or you want to play against PvE and play against bosses. It's like it just became such a fascinating hook for me, and we're only fractionally there. There's so many more things I want to do with it that we've been working on, different little encounter types and other types of bosses and other types of things that we're still working on behind the scenes. But it's like the seed of it is there. You can play it as a free demo right now. You can play it in the early access game. So there's like just this excitement of being able to have this like repeat unique experience. And every time you bring a new deck to it, it feels totally different. The types of upgrades that are available to you are different. The types of ways you can you can level up the deck that you're bringing into it are totally different. And so it's just like it makes everyone's collection like so much more valuable and fun. And it's just another way you could take, even if you never bought a single deck and you just have the free decks included. There's like so many hours of play, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, half the time when I'm running through the campaign, I forget that I could be playing other human beings. And it's the same game, but it is such a different and rewarding experience. And then being able to use like the experience points to kind of level up and get some cosmetic rewards or kind of some half decks that this game, there are hours and hours, hundreds of hours of playability for this. And I would be afraid to look at my own stats, how much I've spent on it, but it's yeah, just so much fun. And I mean, that kind of goes without saying because we all love this game so much. We love the possibility that's going on. And with this being on the digital client now, we're kind of in the wild west for where we can go and things we can do with it. And one of the biggest news points was a press release that came out this week related to Web3 and what SolForge Fusion is going to be doing with Web3. I did my best to follow along. If people want the full press release, they can go to our Discord, and it's pinned under that channel for Web3 that you can read that and kind of jump in the discussion. But I would like us to spend some time talking about that and working through questions that we've seen and making sure that everybody's on the same page for this Web3. So, as far as I understand it, the idea is that it's difficult to be able to completely own your digital decks and to be able to trade them securely, that somebody could be doing nefarious programming things that I don't really understand. But when we're partnering with this process of trying to make everything secure and safe, that's the point of what's going on with our Web3 announcement, right?
Yeah, let me just I'm gonna try to put it in as simple terms as I can, and then I'm happy to answer specific questions because I understand that a lot of people don't know the space. I've been following it for a very long time. I've written multiple articles about kind of Web3 in general, and this is like what the blockchain technology can do and what the promises of it are, what the perils of it are, and what the challenges of it are. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. But the short version of this is the easiest way to understand it is right. SolForge Fusion started as a tabletop game experience, and I started out as a tabletop TCG player. If I play tabletop SolForge Fusion or tabletop game like Magic, I own a deck. I can play that deck in the game. I can give that deck to somebody else. I can lend it to somebody else. I can sell it to somebody else. I can just, it's mine. I do what I want with it, right? And somehow in the digital world, this is no longer the norm. In the digital world, is in every game like Hearthstone or Magic Arena or any of the major players, they all just say, nope, actually, we're just leasing you things, digital things. You don't even own a digital object. You can't do anything with it. You can't clear your account. You know, you have to do black market behind the scenes things for it. I don't want that. I want to have your digital deck work just like your physical deck, where you can take it, lend it to a friend, sell it, trade it, do whatever you want with it. It's yours, right? Not my not and that is exactly why we're using Web3, and we're using specifically the Solana blockchain, because I did a lot of research on a lot of different options. They are, you know, cost effective, they're environmentally conscious, they're secure, they're everything that I wanted it to be. And after researching the different options, using things like, you know, Steam has a platform for it, trying to build our own solution. This was by far the best solution for what I believe the long-term interest of the players, for the interest of the company, and being able to like economically execute something like this, so we can focus our energies more on building the great game that everybody wants, growing the community. I think that's that's the heart of what we're building right now. And there's more puzzle pieces to it, but that's the simplest way is we're going to give you the option to own your own decks, sell your own decks, trade your own decks, do whatever you want with them, because that's what you should have. That's the rights you should have as a player, I believe. That's it.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And you emphasize that it's an option. So it's not like we're being forced into it. It's an opt-in opportunity.
Yes. So just like I said, there are multiple pillars to the game, right? If you're the tabletop player and you never want to play the app with your decks, cool. You don't have to do that. If you're a digital only player and you never want to touch a physical card, cool. You don't have to do that. If you are either of those two types of players and you never want to worry about accessing the blockchain or connecting your decks to a wallet and being able to trade them or sell them, you don't have to do that. It's 100% optional. Nobody has to do that. You could just completely ignore this entire part of the conversation. I understand that there's a lot of like fears and concerns around that space. I think some people are very excited about it. I know some people are very excited about it. Some people are very scared of it. And so we're gonna the commitment that we have as a company is, one, we're gonna work on putting together documentation before this actually goes live. It's not live yet. Plan is to go live in June, and we'll keep you updated on timelines, because every timeline is tentative while we build it and vet it and everything. We'll build a clear workflow of here's how you do it, here's the steps. Every single player of the game is going to get free of, you know, we got SFG, or the currency that you'll use to like move the decks around and unlock them. Everybody's going to get that for free. You could take the decks you already own, that you've already bought, and then turn those into tradable decks that you can do whatever you want with. And that's what everybody gets. If you want to ignore that, ignore it. You lose nothing. If you want to try it, you could try it and see how it feels and see if it's something that's fun for you. And that's kind of where we're headed with it. And I purposely built things so that it is optional and opt-in for exactly that reason. Some people are scared of it. I think there are some justifiable concerns, like, you know, for example, if you move stuff to your wallet, it's your wallet. Just like if you put money in your wallet, if you leave it out on the street and somebody takes it, like, you lost it, right? We don't have like the same security measures here, so that's a legitimate concern that people need to think about. But then there's a lot of like just not real concerns. Like, a lot of people who are concerned about, you know, the environmental impact of the Solana blockchain, which is exactly the same as like doing Google searches, and nobody worries about the energy impact of doing Google searches, right? So I'm trying to educate people, and I think it's worthwhile to push past some of the unfounded fears, and it's also worthwhile to discuss and work through how do we make the best version of this that makes sure that people feel secure, and that we can not, you know, because there are plenty of other cool things I would like to do with the blockchain over time. I believe that the idea of having what I call community owned games, right? This idea that the community actually does own the games, and you could have, in theory, you could use these tokens to incentivize people to run their own servers and to support the game that way, and to build new features to the game, or to have community events. And we will be giving out rewards for people like you, Dirk, serves a great example, right? You came as a community member, you started a podcast, you ran a bunch of events, you acted as a beacon to the community, and then, as it turns out, we decided, okay, well, we want to hire you in to help us because you're so good at this. But for the most part, we could do the exact same thing with these tokens, rewarding people. Say, hey, you did a great job. You're the kind of person that's building podcasts and doing streams and running events, and like that. This is another way that we can choose to reward the community, and that this community fund should be and will be determined by the community how those rewards should be doled out. Like, we're going to set it up and do it because that's the easiest way and that's what makes the most sense. But over time, if this goes well and people like it, again, the only thing we're definitely building is this trading system, which is totally opt-in, and that will remain opt-in forever. We don't ever want to force people to do this. So that's the plan. I want to be clear about that. But I also want people to get excited about and hopeful about what can come down the road too. I think it's an exciting area to explore as a designer, but that is the area that we are purposefully discussing and engaging with our community to see what the best solutions are. And I don't claim to have all the answers or committed. We're 100% doing this, we're 100% doing that. But I put up a documentation about this, and in addition to the press release, we put up what's called a white paper. It's like a Git book thing. It just lists, here's the vision of like all the stuff we're thinking about. Here's how we're trying to set things up. Here's why we're doing it. So if you want to go into more detail there, or of course our Discord is a great place where we have been answering questions, and I know people have been posting a lot of questions. People have very strong opinions, and I appreciate and we welcome all of those opinions.
Yeah, and it's been I'm always excited. Like I'm easily excited, but then sustaining my interest in when you're talking about all the possibilities is it is so cool. And as somebody that is so focused on community and growing community, the concept of a community owned game is just mind-blowing for me and being able to help incentivize and usher in more people to be helping grow this game and transforming it is really empowering for me as somebody that was able to work through it to kind of bring other people into that side of things too.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm very uniquely positioned in the entire world of gaming to be taking these steps. And I'll tell you why. Because not only do we have the experience of this heart-wrenching experience of having to shut down the original SolForge, right? People lost their
Mhm.
collections. We lost a lot of hard work and effort. A great community suddenly lost the kind of touchstone that was around. But we also experimented with things like the community helping to run the game, right? We had great community members like Kalari and others who were like, okay, we'll do it on our own and we'll have a community run thing. And the reality is that the logistics and the economics of that did not make any sense. And it ended up, costing a lot of money and not leading to a quality product and not leading a ton of problems. And so we ended up that just didn't work. It didn't support the game. And so, but having the whole value of having things like a community controlled token setup and the ability to dole out these kinds of rewards and try to create an ecosystem that works in principle, and is that you could then create a system that does work economically, that doesn't require people to have like trust and uncertainty about what's going to happen. They could have a very clear, that's one of the things I like about blockchain. Like the code is open source, you can see what's happening, you know what's happening, it's very verifiable. So there's this really a very great aspirational thing that I think if we push past the early Wild West uncertainty and the legitimate, concerns around scammers and the things that came before, I think that there's a path here that's very exciting. And again, because of the visceral pain that existed of I had a collection, I paid for that collection, I played for that collection, I loved it, and it's gone. This has the promise of removing that as a fear down the road, and I think that's really exciting. And so I want to build towards that. That's the north star for me of why we're making this direction, is to say like this is something that can last forever. Like I don't build games to make a quick buck. I don't, if I wanted to make a lot of money I would have stayed in law school. Right, I don't make games to last a year or 2 years. I've been working on Ascension. I've been working on Ascension for 15 years, more than that from when I first started the design. I've SolForge, I haven't let die despite every rational decision to the contrary that should have said I should have walked away once it went down the first time, because I believed in the game. And now the community that exists today is validating that belief. Shards of Infinity is another game we released. I forget the exact year we released it. 20, I want to say 2016, 2015, something like that. And we are now releasing the Shards Saga Edition, which like brings back every version of the game, all the expansions in a brand new mode with the best, coolest content. I'm so excited about this freaking product. So I make games that last. That's my like mission. I want to build games that last, and even more importantly, honestly, than the games is the communities, because I now have
Mhm.
people that come up to me and say, not only do people got married because they met playing Ascension. People now play Ascension with their kids who weren't
Mhm.
born when Ascension released. Like families and communities and relationships and friendships and things, they come together in a way that is like so powerful. And I know from my own life, that's what I grew up with. I made a living playing Magic, but that wasn't what was important. What was important is the friendships I built that I still last to this day, right? Like I
Mhm.
want to be the source of that for the next generation. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah, and it's always good to keep that in mind is we're here because we love games, we love community, and that it's meant to be a good positive thing. This has been fantastic. This is a great discussion talking about the origins of SolForge Fusion, the future of it. If people have more questions or want to engage in more conversation, especially about Web3 stuff, Lucas, what should people do?
Yeah, there's a couple places that people can go. We'll be posting on YouTube here actually a video on demand from when Justin took over the stream there earlier this month. Answered a lot of questions that people were having on it after the announcement dropped. As well as you can join us in our Discord. We're always happy to talk about anything related to our games and any questions that people may have right now relating to Web3 or any of our up and coming projects.
And I think that's a good place to kind of put a bow on this interview. Justin, thank you for taking time to show up on Forge, and we look forward to seeing you in random pairings on the SolForge Fusion digital client, in tournaments, and kind of streaming, and then out in person too at conventions.
Yeah, fantastic. Can't wait. I will be on the queues, and I will also be attending Gen Con along with you and the rest of the team. Also worth noting, I'll be doing a talk, a first live edition of my Think Like a Game Designer podcast at Gen Con. So people can actually attend, ask questions, participate. It's like one of the other things I'm passionate about is teaching other people how to design. If you think that doing this might be fun, it is. It's hard, but it's fun. I am passionate about helping people to learn and get into the industry. So if that is exciting to you, you can of course check out the podcast, but also come see me at Gen Con. Come see it live.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Justin. Take care.
All right. Bye bye.
In future episodes, we want to hear from the community. If you've got a question that you'd like us to talk about on Forge, you can email us at op@stoneblade.com with the subject line questions for OnForge. Or you can reach out to me on Discord as well, saying that this is something you'd like us to discuss on the show. Thank you, Lucas, for your expertise on this, for being able to be my co-host for this show. Where can people find you?
Oh, people can find me on the Discord. It's just Lucas L on the Discord. You'll be able to find me there, always joining in conversations. I have my live stream every week that I do on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. As well as we have a whole bunch of other streaming times now that you've started doing that. I'm sure we'll have a link down to our Twitch there as well as some of our times. Yeah, that's where you can find me. And then also, if you have any questions about support or need help with any technical aspects of the game, or maybe the client, or maybe having issues logging into your account, any of those things, email me at support@stoneblade.com, and I will do my best to assist you.
And like you mentioned, I'm starting to pop up in a lot of places. I stream on Mondays at 7 p.m. Central Time, and I'm streaming for 2 hours. I'm also catching up on YouTube, uploading some of my release week streams onto YouTube. Future videos are going to live on YouTube and on Twitch, and we're trying to expand our realm of content creation, so we'll start showing up in other places as well. If you're looking for weekly events, we've got North American events, and you don't have to be in these time zones to participate. It just might be a little inconvenient. We've got North American weekly digital client events, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Central. European weekly digital client events are Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Central European Summertime. And Australian events, I believe they're still Mondays at 8 p.m. AEST. If you are interested in finding out more about the Australian events, you can check out Bryce or the SolForge Discord channel. They're doing excellent work out that way. If people have questions for me, they can reach out to me at the letters op@stoneblade.com or on Discord, where I'm still Jurch. My Steam friend code is 103-628-342 in case anybody wants to challenge me to a game of SolForge Fusion on the digital client. Thank you, everyone, for watching on Forge, and we look forward to seeing you at the table.